our next guest for the past 10 months, we've been told stay at home to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. But what if you don't have a home? What if you're alone living on the streets? For so many people, our youth that are at risk, well, for some of them, they've been able to be lucky enough to find a home and hope at Covenant House. It's a Michigan faith-based nonprofit. And with us today here on the MegaCast to talk a little bit more is Gerry Piro. He's the executive director for the Covenant House. We're honored to have you with us here on the show. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. It's a pleasure being here with you.
I was able to go onto your website a little bit earlier today, and I saw your message to the people. The need is great, but before we get into that, for those that aren't familiar with your organization, can you give us some background on what you do?
Sure. So, Covenant House, we are one of 17 locations in the United States. And internationally, it began in 1971, somewhere around there. And what we do is we work with 18 to 24-year-olds who, for one reason or another, have become homeless. And so we pretty much stay with that particular age group, and we work as much as we can to get them back on track. So we provide shelter. We have a capacity of 45 here in the Detroit location. We also have another shelter out in Grand Rapids also. That's our second one that we have there, and we have a capacity there of 28. But here in Detroit, we have 45 that would be living in our emergency shelter right in from the streets. And then we also have a longer term shelter called the Transitional Living Program. And that one has a capacity of 20 that live in there. So right now, because of the pandemic, the city has reduced our capacity from 45 to 30, basically because we have 3 in a bedroom, and they feel that that is too much where you cannot sleep head to toe. So it's just a precaution in terms of making sure that everybody is kept safe here. So what we do also, besides food and clothing, we also try and address their emotional needs, their mental health needs. We also try and address the issues of getting them IDs, getting them into Medicare rather. And we also work with, again, probably the most difficult issue is their mental health. So we have social workers, we have people that work with the state in order to get them their state IDs, because without that, they are not really eligible to get any of the help that they deserve. We also have a workforce development department here, and that is really very important because nothing will turn around for these young people unless they become job ready. So we have classes that go on every day where they must attend if they are not working or not in school. And through those classes and through those seminars, we try and help them understand what the world of work is about, what the expectations would be once they get a job, how to maintain that job. And we then connect with the employer to be sure that if anything is going wrong, we're among the first to hear it and try to correct it. So everyone that comes here can stay for up to 3 months. I would say that pretty much everything turns over in 3 to 4 weeks, and hopefully we can do everything that we can to get them back on their feet and to successfully reintegrate into the society here. So that's kind of a long answer.
No, and I will say, Gerry, I've had the pleasure of being able to do a ride along. I don't remember if I was at Channel 7 or Fox 2 back in the day with one of your volunteers. And I don't think people understand the impact that your organization has on the lives of some of the individuals that you're able to reach, because you guys are really the superheroes for so many of these people, and the need is great. And a lot of people may not understand that some of these kids are coming from the foster home family or the foster system, in that once they reach a certain point, the foster family no longer receives benefits from the state of Michigan. So they're basically kicked out. And then they find themselves on the streets, and then living in abandoned homes. And when you're on the streets, you have no one. Your life can seem hopeless. You're giving them the direction and changing their lives, but also you hold them accountable at the same time.
Yes. I want to respond to a couple of things that you talked about. Most of the youth that end up in Covenant House usually end up here because their families have fallen apart. And as you also mentioned, they are aging out of uh, foster care. And when they leave foster care, there really are a lot of benefits that they can access, but they don't know how. And that's probably the one thing that we do immediately when they come here, is to make sure that they receive all the benefits that they are entitled to from being in the foster care system. So being in foster care, there are a lot of good people that are trying to help and keep everybody and keep these young people safe. And then there are those who are basically, it's just a job and they live by that. You also mentioned about our outreach program. That is critical to what we do. And the person that you met who runs our outreach program for over 20 years is Stephanie Taylor. And she is like an angel on the streets. Nothing stops that woman from ministering and working with these young people that are on the street. We have 2 teams that go out twice a day, and they drive around to those areas where these young people tend to hang out or congregate and get together, and offer them as much as possible, trying to convince them that they can really turn their lives around or do better coming into Covenant House. And sometimes they do come right into the van and come back with her. But many times she leaves them with our card that lists everything that we can do for them, all the services that we can provide. And it has the phone number that they can call, and we can go back out and pick them up again. So that is a very critical piece of who we are and what we do, the outreach program. If I may elaborate a bit more on that, across the street from Covenant House here in Detroit, we're on Martin Luther King Boulevard and I-96, is the Salvation Army. And we have partnered with them in a very important way. First Friday of every month, they have a program called Encore that we've created with them. And we go out with them at night on those first Fridays with their bread and bed truck and with our outreach team. And so our outreach team is very familiar where these young people are hanging out. And so we lead them to those locations. And it has been tremendously successful. And it's being supported by the Ford company. And for an example, many of these young people live and sleep and stay behind the Rosa Parks Transit Center. When the pandemic came by, they were no longer allowed to sit or sleep on the inside of the transit center. So they are sleeping outside behind the transit center. And last Friday, when our team showed up, they came running out from behind to get food, to get some comfort, and to possibly be able to go back with us to the shelter. And that is happening in several places where these young people hang out, under the Ayer viaducts, under the overpasses, in trailer parks, any place where they can find some cover. And we find them out, and we go back to make sure they're still okay if they do not want to come in. We work with families that have children as well. And it breaks your heart to see the situation that some of them are living in. They were telling me the last week when they went to Rosa Parks, there were older people there, also older homeless people, and this one man was eating out of the garbage pail. And that really, really is nothing like that should be happening that we can try and correct. So that's another piece of what we do, going right out onto the streets and making sure that we can do as much as possible to end the homelessness there.
And the beautiful thing about what Covenant House does, it's not just about giving them shelter, but it's also about lifting them up so they can sustain life on their own. Can you tell us more about some of the programs that you're offering? Because I do wonder how the pandemic is impacting some of the jobs that some of the individuals have been able to get, because you would think a lot of them are kind of more those low income jobs, such as at restaurants and bars, and they're being so deeply impacted right now because of the virus. Is that spilling over into some of your people that you're trying to help as well?
Yes. So as I mentioned, an important piece here is the workforce development program. And that's where we try and do as much training as possible so that they know how to dress for the job, how to get to the job, which is a very big piece here because they're going to be taking the bus. Some of them take 45, 2 hours to get to their position, to get to their job, and they persevere. So we also have addiction services here in what we call our House of Hope. And we try and work with these young people again to come off of their addiction and become a bit more responsible in who they are and what they do and how they do it. So we also make sure that they are healthy. We have a nurse practitioner on site that is here for them for a lot of testing. Even now with the pandemic, everything has really been turned upside down. And we have to try and do our best to keep them on campus as opposed to going out and hanging out with their friends or in dangerous places where they might easily contract the virus. So we have had to do what a lot of other organizations have had to do, is put in a lot more protocols, put in a lot more cleaning and the way that we do dinner and all of that. So it has all changed all around. So now we test all of our staff and our residents every other week to be sure that we're not going to be spreading that virus within the shelter. So all of those things are critical in making sure that they are safe, making sure that they can survive, making sure that they can thrive, and that they're ready to meet the world. It's really a joy when we see some of these young people do so well, who are able to manage their lives, who are able to go to work on a regular basis, who are able to save what they are making at that job, and preparing to go into their own home. So that's the end game here at Covenant House, preparing them to go into their own home. So there are several ways that can happen, but through government vouchers, we have what's called the rapid rehousing, which pays for their rent for a certain period of time. And in our longer term shelter, that is what that is all about, that they are preparing to go out into their own home and hopefully be successful in maintaining that home and knowing about budgeting and in being able to maintain the job. Another program that we recently initiated is a mentoring program. That is becoming very, very important, where we match up someone who is really serious about preparing to go out into their own and back into society, into their own home. We match them up with a responsible adult or a married couple. And they basically mentor that young person. They create a relationship, they provide advice, they socialize together all over a period of time so that these young people have someone that they can, in a way, call their own, someone that they could go to, someone that they can trust. And beyond all of the staff that are here. And that has really been very helpful to a number of our young people here that have gotten into housing. We actually have a young man on site who came here as a homeless youth, and he was really very determined to make his life better. And he started working in our maintenance area. And he was doing so well, we offered him a part-time job, which then became a full-time job with benefits. And he really is a great example of what can happen when we work with these young people, tell them what's waiting out there for them, how they can get there. We also have 4 charter schools that are specifically geared towards homeless youth to come and get a full diploma sanctioned by the state of Michigan. So we have 1 on our campus, we have 2 more in Detroit, and we have another school on our Grand Rapids campus. And they have been extremely successful in helping those young people get their full high school diploma. So there are several things that we do in many, many ways to try and help these young people whose life is ahead of them to make sure that they make the best of it. We don't want the city of Detroit or the state of Michigan to lose these young people who can be extremely helpful in communities and become an important part of their community. It's what we try to do every day.
And Gerry, you and members of your team, you really are angels outside of the pandemic as well. And I know that your organization is about, what, 90% privately funded. To be able to continue these resources and to lift up and give hope and a future to so many of these kids, how is fundraising and what do you need from the public right now?
Well, fundraising is critical to who we are and what we do. So as you mentioned, we are about 90% privately funded by our donors. And we love our donors, obviously, and we pray for them because they have blessed us. But we still need more because government grants will not cover all that we do. We have a 5.5-acre campus with 7 buildings that are constantly requiring maintenance, as well as the work that we do with these young people and staff. So fundraising is just key for all of us. And we just never stop. We have to keep going. And we do the best that we can.
So you're listening to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. Sorry, Gerry, we just have to get the station ID out there for you. Gerry, before we let you go, I know you're in the middle of a new campaign right now. How can members of the public help you?
So we're getting ready to, again, launch a campaign, a fundraising campaign. This is kind of the most difficult part of the year because Christmas giving is over and we really haven't made our way into the spring. We had to eliminate 2 special events that we do that were very popular. So I would say go to our website, covenanthousemI.org, and there are several ways to support us. And possibly if someone wants to volunteer, that would also be the portal to go to, covenanthousemI.org. And whatever they can spare, whatever they can support us with, we gratefully will receive. And it will keep us going. It will help us make sure that these young people have the chance that they deserve, have the emotional background, which is what the pandemic has taken away from them. We are the ones they run to. They don't have family, and we're there to reassure them to make sure that they're going to be successful.
Well, you are truly changing lives, and your dedication and your commitment to so many of these youth, it's appreciated, and we all need to get behind what you're doing. So thank you for your time, and we're hoping that this will give a little bit more awareness to the efforts that you're making. Thank you so much for being with us.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity.